Oh, wow. It's worth coming up for. So, whee!
You're more than welcome to hop on there. We get people standing up there for a photo if you want one.
Oh, okay. Well, I wouldn't get blown over.
No, well,
Oh, this is amazing.
But you're happy now.
But anyway, I'm standing here, if you can hear me.
Yep.
I'm Sharon Brett Kelly, and today on The Detail I am standing, or kneeling, at the highest point of a wind turbine at Makara in Wellington. Right in front of me is the enormous blade of the wind turbine. It's not moving, they've turned it off, but I can see further down the hill are other wind turbines. You can see right out to Mana Island and then Kapiti Island. And apparently on a clear day, you can see all the way to Ruapehu. I've been invited here by Meridian Energy to just learn a little bit more about how the energy industry works. I'm going to find out what the risk is of another energy crunch like last winter's, and what we all want to know, will our high electricity bills ever come down? But back to the start of this journey at the bottom of the turbine tower with Westwind technician Tim Clark and apprentice Arthur Kiss. The turbines switched off.
I'll do a buddy check on you.
Okay.
Is 13.9.
13.9.
And we're kitted out in climbing gear and helmets for the 2 vertical ladders and lift that will take us 70 metres up. First, a measure of the wind.
That's the wind speed conversion. So it's about 50 kilometres an hour, give or take, at the moment.
How does that compare with last week?
Last week we were getting 25, 30 metres a second. So, 130k an hour gusts.
And you shut everything down last week?
Last week we did. A few faulted out just through the high wind trips that they have because it becomes unsafe for the turbine to operate. And then we trialled just shutting them down to minimise any potential damage to the turbines.
How often do you have to do that, shut it down because of the high winds?
Maybe once a year might be ideal, because the normal wind speed's fine, but it's when the gusts come through, because you can go from running 8 metres a second to all of a sudden a gust of 20 metres a second, and the turbine can't quite react as quick to control its speed.
Tim says this is no amusement park, hence the rigorous safety checks. Getting up and down the steel tower involves clipping on and off at several points, so there's no risk of free falling.
Right, so if you want to jump in.
Okay, so I'm climbing into this
You want to climb?
2-person lift, which is just really a steel box. It's very cosy.
It is very cosy, and there's no elevator music, sorry.
And how many metres up are we going in this?
In this we're going about 52 metres on this. And it runs, I can't remember the speed, but it takes about 3 minutes to get to the top.
And how often have you gone up and down in these turbines? I mean, how many times a day or a week do you go up?
Each turbine gets serviced once a year, and it takes about 3 days to complete a service. But then we have a maintenance as wear and tear happens. So as you'll see, the terrain in here, the terrain gives you your wind gusts, which that can create issues with different skill sets.
So you've been out here 14 years?
14 years, yeah.
Would you be one of the oldest serving team members here?
Oldest and longest serving, yes.
Has it changed much in that time? In terms of the work or the...
We've got more efficient as we've learned more about the turbines. This is our floor.
Okay.
As I mentioned earlier, this is quite a high wind site in the world.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of learnings for us and Siemens here. So that's the join at Tower, as we call it.
Right, so when it was shipped over here from Korea, did you say?
Yeah, the tower from Korea, yep.
So it was in two pieces?
Two pieces for the tower.
Only two pieces?
Yeah. And then in the cell was a separate piece and the blades and the hub. 7 pieces basically. West Wind, we had to build a temporary wharf in the Cook Strait to ship all the parts to there because we couldn't move them from the port through the roads out here because the size of them wouldn't get through the narrow roads or the tunnels.
So we're hooking onto the steel rope and I can start climbing. Here we go. Climbing 12 metres up. Oopsie, a vertical ladder. And as they say, it's not a race.
A little bit of here from the rope workers. You got the generator down there, so that's your main components, your hub, rotor setup, main shaft, gearbox and generator.
So when you say generator, that's the thing that collects the power and then takes
That's what makes the power, yeah. I'm a mechanic, so I'm not going to explain this too well, but basically there's a lot of copper windings in there, and as that's rotating, that creates your power, and then it gets sent down the tower in our case, out the door to a transformer, which you can see is like a big green shed.
That's just down the way a bit?
No, it's just at the bottom of each turbine, and that transformer, because these generate power at 690 volts, that transformer steps it up to 33,000 volts. Then through underground wires on site, underground cables on site, goes to the substation, and at substation transformers step it up again, so it's then transported to the national grid at 110,000 volts. So,
gee, we're swaying a bit here, aren't we, Tom?
A little bit of movement up here. They say it's give or take sway of a half a metre up to a metre. No different than a building in town sort of thing. So sometimes you go home and you're standing at a bench and you think, oh, I got my sea legs on today, it's a bit windy. Because you're up here and you don't notice it.
Oh, after opening up the hatch. The hatch opens up like the space shuttle and we see the steep hills of Makara, sheep grazing under the turbines, clouds racing across the sky and Wellington's rugged coastline.
We're lucky, I say. We can open up a beautiful sunny day. You get sunburnt while you're eating lunch.
You must love working here, right?
I do. I mean, previous to here, I was basically a car mechanic, working in a workshop, looking out a roller door. Now you've seen my view. It's the best view in town.
And you don't mind the weather?
You get used to it. It's the weather wherever you are. And up here, once the doors are closed, you don't know what it's doing out there.
Lovely.
Apart from the rock and roll. On the move.
Right, so I've come from Makara to the city centre of Wellington, actually to the old BNZ building, and I am in, what's this room here? This is the wholesale trading room of Meridian?
This is our wholesale trading floor, so this is where we determine how much generation we want to use and plan for how do we optimise that generation in the New Zealand electricity market.
Can I just get you to say who you are and what you do?
So, my name's Chris Garr. I'm Head of Wholesale Operations. My role is to offer that generation into the New Zealand electricity market and to dispatch it.
So we've come from the wind farm out at Makara.
Yep.
So can you explain to me what happens to that power that's generated out there and how that all fits into everything else that you do?
The first thing we do is we forecast the wind. So we have good sense of how much we think is going to generate from the Makara wind farm for the next 5 days. That gives us a sense of how it might be scheduled, and we offer that schedule into the market. so that the rest of the market knows what the capability of that. Forecasting wind generation from wind is difficult, firstly because the wind's very variable in New Zealand. I'm pretty sure when you were out there it was very windy, and so the plant would have been running really hard. If it's windier than that, sometimes the plant will shut itself down. So you go from full production to no production. So it can change quite quickly. But usually it's pretty reliable. So most of the time we have a really good sense of how it's going to generate and what that pattern might look like. So we have a bunch of mathematical processes that run in the background that generate a forecast. We work with Met Service who provide that service, and we offer the generation into the market. So our offers go into the market for all of our power stations, so both the hydro stations as well as the wind, and soon to be solar, and also soon to be a battery for us. Every other generator in New Zealand also make their generation available and offer it into the electricity market. The offers go to Transpower, who have a role called system operator. The job of the system operator is to take everyone's offers and to match it against demand, and they will dispatch the cheapest generation that's required to meet demand.
So you're looking 5 years out.
Yep.
What is the situation?
There's more power coming online all the time, particularly solar. New Zealand's already really good for renewables relative to most other countries.
We're 86%?
We can be anywhere between about 85 to 99%. 98% is probably the highest I've seen.
Over summer?
Yeah, and if it's a windy day. But we're going through this transition of we're likely to have a lot of solar coming online in the next 5 years. That will quite dramatically change the shape of how our market works.
Yeah. Okay, and over here is many screens and one person. Hi, I'm Sharon.
Hi, I'm Basha.
Hi, Basha. What are you doing here?
So we are doing the generator controllers. We control all the hydropower stations and wind farms. So I'm looking at our main screen of
So you're
6.
actually managing how much, electricity comes out of these places?
That's right. Depends what is offered from the trader. So it starts in the trader and it comes to us and we see the offer and we just generating, allocating the amount of water we can flow through across 6 power stations.
And is that changing all the time? Those numbers are changing?
Every 5 minutes, receiving dispatch from Transpower. So across every 5 minutes, we'll make the changes over the lakes.
A lot of sites. How many sites are you looking at?
We're looking at 6 power stations. Manapori wind farms that we're monitoring. He went to the west wind today.
Yes.
So that's the west wind that we are looking. So we have all the turbines, exactly what's the generation is happening at the stage. So yeah, we can view everything.
The wholesale team is surrounded by screens with constantly changing colourful graphics that show the spikes and dips of electricity demand and supply, as well as the prices. But that's not where household consumers buy their power. Remember, Meridian is a gentailer, a generator that sells the power on the wholesale market, and a retailer. That means it buys the electricity from the wholesale market and sells it on to householders and business customers. I'll get to our horribly high electricity bills in a moment, but first, Chief Executive Mike Roan tells me why he's hugely relieved about the heavy rainfall last week that hit the hydro lakes in the South Island.
Droughts are no fun. They're inevitable though. And so again, our power system has been built with droughts in mind. So the scale of the southern hydro lakes, Lake Taupō, the combination of them is there to provide that backup stored energy for and when a drought emerges, because inevitably it will. This year's been a horrible year from that perspective. It has. We had one drought last August. That was, there was a lot of media on that, and we'll come back to it, I'm sure, in this conversation, is the drought disappeared September through December. We got a lot of water, and then it re-emerged with additional force over Christmas. And it literally didn't rain through April, which is incredibly unusual. And so we had the lowest hydro inflows over that period in the historical record. So we've had something that's very unusual is we've had 2 droughts inside a single 12-month period. So as you said, to get some rain has been it's always feels good. If there are problems that you want to have, it's too much water from our perspective.
Okay, yes. Well, let's talk about what happened last year. An energy crunch, is that how you would describe it? I know some people called it a crisis.
It was really tough. I think the thing that hasn't flowed its way through to the public conversation that is really important is we rely on different forms of energy, beyond solar, wind and hydro. Is the country has relied on gas to make, it's a fuel for making electricity. And I think we have become used to having, gas available to provide electricity when the rain, when it doesn't rain. And what we found out last August was not only do we have a drought on our hands, but that those gas stores, the energy that we thought was available to us was not. And that was unexpected. And that's what made it really, really tough.
The loss of the gas supplies came as a shock, even to Mike. Meridian, like other generators, scrambled to get other backup fuel supplies, but they were costly deals. Then
it rained, and it rained a lot. And the interesting piece is none of those deals were necessary.
So did you get your money back?
No.
Oh.
No, we didn't. That cost us over $200 million.
You have a better idea of the gas market now?
Oh, yeah. Yes, we do. But there's still a year or two. I've described it as probably up to 3 years where the loss of gas is going to impact wholesale electricity prices. We know that in 2 to 3 years, I would say probably 3, the investment in renewable energy will start to offset the loss of gas. And so it's what we do in the next 2 to 3 years to manage our way through that will be crucial.
So wholesale prices are staying high. Does that mean consumers are going to keep paying high prices too?
No, I don't think so. So residential consumers are really well isolated from those high wholesale prices.
So you're saying that power prices for households aren't going to go up this year?
They do go up. Over the last 10 years, prices for households have gone up at a rate that's been lower than inflation. We describe that as going down in real terms. And moving forward, I think they might sit just above the rate of inflation. I don't want to kind of say this is absolutely what will happen because we haven't made those decisions yet. But I can see this trajectory because, again, when you look longer term, we see the price of energy coming down for everybody. There's a complication. There are increases in the monopolistic pieces of our industry that are flowing through residential bills, so the transmission and distribution charges, they are lifting. So, let's say inflation was 2%, and the energy portion of a bill would lift by just over 2%. The total bill might lift between 8 and 10%. 6% would be through the transmission distribution price increases, and the 2% would be for energy. Now,
gotcha. Yeah.
A consumer only sees the final uplift. So that's not
right.
Much consolation for people.
The transmission costs, are they coming down?
I'm probably not the perfect person to talk to on this, but the regulated monopoly elements of our industry and other industries, they're regulated by the Commerce Commission through pricing periods that typically span 5 years. And so the price increases, say 6% increase through transmission distribution prices that I mentioned, you usually see those flow for the full 5-year period. So I would say 5 years of increases through transmission distribution pricing in the 6 to 8% for people, for residential consumers.
Back to this year, this winter, is there any danger that we will see a repeat of last year with that energy crunch?
I hate to say never, But we navigated last year. Prices lifted, security of supply was never in question. And I think that's as big a shock as the electricity sector has seen, certainly in the 33 years that I've been involved. So I feel quietly confident about 2025, and I feel better again about 2026, because I know that when we hit 2026, some of the elements that are unavailable to us this year through contracts become available in 2026.
And the weather or the climate, how do you shore up against the unpredictability?
All the analysis we do on climate change tells us that we will get more rain into those southern hydro lakes as the atmosphere warms up, because they'll bring bigger storms into those catchments. That makes me feel really good, but they are just forecasts. And if there's a bigger weather system, we need to make sure that our dams can withstand bigger storms than they currently do. And the second thing that we're starting to look at, driven a little bit by climate change, but also driven by what happened last August, the loss of gas, is we're looking at whether we can't extend our hydro storage facilities in the country.
Does that mean digging bigger lakes?
No, what you tend to do is you tend to lift the lake, so the existing lake level, you lift the existing dam structures. A great example.
So build on what's already there, build higher.
Yeah, and we're starting to work through how to get those elements consented. If we can get access to water that already sits in the lakes, we can bring the lakes lower on average, which would then allow us to catch more water from the larger events that fell. 60 years ago, people had the foresight, the courage, the capability to invest in, the hydro backbone as we know it today. And we're going through a series of changes where it's likely to mean that we're going to need to extend those hydro reservoirs. But people 60 years in the future are going to be able to look back and go, if we can achieve it, they'll look back and go, wow, we're benefiting from the insight and the courage and capability that people had now. It doesn't mean any of it's going to be easy, because we all love the environment that we live in, and we're talking about making adjustments to that environment. But it's looking increasingly necessary to drive both the economic opportunities for the country and provide for electricity security. So it's tough but exciting at the same time.
That's it for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and NZ On Air. This episode was produced by Gwen McClure and engineered by William Saunders. Thanks to Tim Clark and Arthur Kiss at Westwind, Meridian's wholesale markets team, and Mike Roan. I'm Sharon Brett Kelly. Ka kite anō.